Right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Leader, and I'm going to be taking you through this presentation this morning. Please do ask questions as we go along. I've got quite a lot of ground to cover, but I will try and answer questions either as we go or a little bit later on as we go. So I can tell you a little bit about me, and then I'm going to introduce my SOPE framework, as I call it. All of that will be explained. And then we're going to talk about ideal customer profiles, value propositions, and channel strategy. A little bit about me first. So I'm Richard Leader. I'm a fractional CMO, which means I help multiple companies with their marketing strategy and their marketing implementation. I also do advisory work. I'm a coach, a non-exec director, and a trustee of a charity. I've been in marketing leadership for about 20 years, working across the B2B world and the B2C world. And my contact details are there. But let me explain a little bit about the SOPE framework. I put this in place really to help me get up to speed fairly quickly with the business and their marketing requirements. But actually, I think it's a really good way of thinking about your marketing. Unfortunately, what happens a lot of the time is when people see that they've got a growth problem or a marketing problem, they want to get in on the execution. So they say things like, my email's not working, or ads are too expensive. But actually, the real challenge comes further up the funnel in terms of the strategy. So what I put in place is this framework where I look at strategy, which we're going to talk about today. I look at the organization, so the people and the tools that you have in place to be able to deliver on that strategy. And then the bit that marketeers hate, which is process, which is really all about making sure that you've got the right measurement tools in place, that you've got the ability to build repeatable success in place. And then we get on to the execution and making sure that our marketing actually meets the strategy and delivers on that. So that helps me really sort of get going with the business and to really get under the skin and find the gaps and the bits that are missing. But so often it's the strategy that is lacking in the first place. Now, the marketing strategy is quite a big thing, and I'm not going to cover the whole of marketing strategy. We're not really going to talk about brand today. We're not really going to talk about necessarily aligning your product, business, and marketing strategies. But there are a few fundamentals which a lot of founders and a lot of business people don't necessarily get right first time. And that's fine, but it is super important to really focus on these things. And the three things that I'm going to look at are your ideal customer profile, your value proposition, and your channel strategy. And so it's really important, super important, probably the most important thing is about defining or refining your target customer. So by defining your ideal customer profile, this helps you really focus your time, your resources, and your messaging on the customers most likely to buy and to stay and to advocate for your business. And this is true whether you're a business-to-business organization or a business-to-consumer organization. You've really got to understand and focus on who those people are. And here's an example of a couple of businesses doing just that, right? I don't know a great deal about cars, and I don't actually know a great deal about car marketing, but here's a couple of examples for you from websites taken fairly recently. The top one is Toyota. The second one is Ford. Now, to me, those cars look exactly the same, but their target market is slightly different for this. Toyota has a reasonable place in the older customer market, what we call the baby boomers. They do pretty well in that space. Ford do pretty well in all spaces, actually. They're the top manufacturer in pretty much every generation at the moment. But they're really trying to focus on the younger Gen X and the older millennial audiences, the sort of the family, if you like. Now, what's really interesting and super generalizing, but really interesting about those audiences is the older audience is motivated by somebody who can help them. They're motivated by customer service. They're motivated by somebody who is going to guide them through a difficult process. And there we have it from Toyota. Their lead line is, how can we help you today? The younger audience, that younger Gen X and later millennial audience, are much more motivated by finding things out for themselves, by exploring. And the call to action on the Ford site is explore. So it's just an example of where a couple of organizations have thought about their ICP and tailored their marketing to reach that. The question, though, is who do you want to be your target customer? What sort of customer do you want to encourage to bring through to your business? Is it the biggest purchaser? Is it the most frequent purchaser? Is it the most profitable purchaser? There's a whole load of different things that you can bring into there. One of the things to look at, which I think is really important, is advocates and referrers. If you build an audience, they might not be the biggest or most frequent purchasers, but if they're the most frequent referrers and advocates for your business, that can actually have a real impact on your bottom line in the long term. Maybe if you're in that B2B environment in particular, or some sort of considered purchase, what sort of customer gets you through the sales cycle quicker? A lot of B2B companies focus on those enterprise clients. They focus on the banks, or they focus on the sort of large supermarkets or somebody like that. But they can take years to get through that sales cycle. Whereas a smaller business, you might be able to get through that sales cycle in a few weeks or a few months. And that might be most important for your business right now. And if you're a mission-driven business, having an aligned mission with your customers is also an important factor. So when you've really understood who it is that you want to be your ICP, your ideal customer profile, then you can start to build out the understanding of who that person really is. And it's the same if you're B2C or B2B. So if you're selling to consumers or you're selling to businesses, you still need to go through this process of really understanding who they are. So if you're looking at consumers, you need to know their demographics, their rough age, their gender, their income, their occupation, education level. Geography is important. The psychographic stuff is really important, right? So this is looking at the values that those people have, the attitudes, their lifestyle, their personality, their goals and aspirations. The most important thing that you can look at is their pain point and goals. So what is the real specific problem that that person is facing? What are the goals that they want to achieve? And how does that make them feel? And you know what? That's exactly the same if you go over into the B2B world. We think about business-to-business sales as being really rational and really sensible. It's not true, right? It's still people that are making that buying decision. So you need to understand your sector and your niche and your size, the stage, the location, all of that sort of stuff. But you also need to understand the pain points, the goals of the business and the person who's buying, and how that makes them feel. Once you understand that, then you can really start to understand how to build your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and how to really then market to them. If any of you are in the audience as old as me, you may remember a TV ad back in the 80s, I think it was, for Anodin Extra headache tablets. And their tagline was around tense, nervous, headache. And the whole point of that ad was they were really laser focused in on the feelings that people had around their pain, their literal physical pain, but the feelings that they had, it was tense, it was nervous. And what they wanted to do was, after giving you the medication, take you to the other side of this circle, to the point where you are contented and serene and relaxed and calm. And that's what we're trying to do here, is really understand the pain and the goals, where we can take them, how that makes somebody feel, so we can then understand how to position our product effectively and get through to people. Which then takes us on. If we've understood who our customer profile is, or our profiles are, you can work with multiple profiles. The more you have, the more challenging it becomes for you, of course. But a lot of people will be focusing on multiple companies. And sometimes businesses work in that sort of marketplace where you have consumers on one side and businesses on the other, and both of those are your customer profiles. That's quite challenging, but you need to understand who those people are and how you can get your message across to each of those audiences. For each ICP, essentially, you need to build a value proposition. And what that really is about how you articulate the value that you add. What do you do? Who do you do it for? And how do you do it? What pain do you solve? What gain do you bring? And how you can add that value is super, super important for you. Now, this is a worksheet. If you use the course that we've set up on Neve, you can download a version of this, the value proposition canvas. This is something that is used quite a lot in the world of marketing. And essentially, it's just a way of you listing out the gains and the pains that you have, that the customer has, and how you can meet them. So what you're looking to do. So you may be familiar with this phrase, jobs to be done. Your customer has a job to be done. So, you know, in the case of the car, right, the job to be done is I need to drive me and my family to school and to work and shopping and to go on holiday, right? I need to get from A to B. It's a fairly vanilla, boring job to be done. But there are gains and there are pains within that buying decision as well. So the gains might be around status. The pains might be around running cost of the vehicle, for example. There's all sorts of things like that we can start to think about. But what are the emotional pains and the emotional gains that the customer has? And how does our product on the left-hand side of the screen really feed into that? When we think about listing our product features on a website, most customers don't really have much interest in your product features unless you can tie those into the pain they're suffering or the gain that they want to receive at the end of that. It's worth having a go at this and just sort of listing out your products and service features on one side, the jobs to be done on the other, and then where those match up in terms of pain and gain. And then you can start to understand how you can articulate that. And this is a very, very basic version of a value proposition. We help our customer do whatever the problem is that they're looking to solve by offering, and then we put in a product benefit. That's the kind of the basic formula, if you like, for a value proposition. And here we've got one. So this is a software business called Asana. And they state this on their website. Asana helps cross-functional teams overcome their organizational growing pains and ensure that goals, processes, and collaboration can continue to scale. So it's functional. It goes through the gains and the pains that the customer can have and tells them roughly how they're going to do it. It's functional, right? But it's not what I would call emotional. Here's a slightly different version of one. This is from a company called Newsflare. And this is a video licensing site. Now, one of the challenges with video licensing, if you've ever done it, is it's complicated. It's quite stressful understanding whether you've got the right thing, whether you've got the right permissions. And one of the upcoming concerns that people have is whether this is genuine video or whether this is some sort of AI slop that they're going to get called out for. So Newsflare, secure, stress-free video licensing, straight in on the emotional piece there. But now it's easier. Okay, so the easier is how I'm solving that product pain for you. Now it's easier than ever to discover and license over 560,000 verified videos filmed by people around the world. So you can see how they're tying everything in a really concise way into the pains and the gains that the customer has. Grammarly, you may be familiar with. So Grammarly is a great little tool which helps you, it corrects your grammar and helps you write. But they've gone really down the sort of the emotional side of things on this, because the challenge that they're not necessarily referring to directly here, The challenge that people have is, I've got all these great ideas, but I just can't get them down on paper. I just can't articulate these thoughts properly. You think big, we'll take care of the details. Work with an AI partner that helps turn your thoughts into writing that's clear, credible, and impossible to ignore. That really ties into the pains and the gains that they've identified their ideal customers have. And a great use of an Oxford comma. I commend them for that. I think that's a really neat example of that sort of emotional state without being direct and obvious about what it is. And look, these guys are just amazing, right? This is Nike. Nike are the masters at this kind of marketing, really. Nike sell trainers. That's not really what they sell. What they're selling is a dream. They're selling a dream of fitness. They're selling a dream of speed and of strength. And in this case, a zero gravity run, the ease of being able to run in a zero gravity world, run beyond in our most advanced cushioning. You can't see the trainer really in this ad. It doesn't even mention that they've got ads on there. They don't need to do that, right? Because they're selling that value proposition of being faster, being stronger, enjoying your exercise more. Nike are amazing at that. And if you go to their website and you start looking at individual trainer brands like this, you'll see that you're a long way down the page before you start actually reading the features of this product, right? So the features will be around what it's made from, how much air cushioning it's got, all of that sort of stuff. But that's way down the list. And the price, well, that's way down even further, right? Because you know it's going to cost you 130 quid at minimum for a pair of these trainers, right? Nike are brilliant at this. So if you get to the stage where you've understood who your customer is, you've been able to articulate your value proposition, so you understand how to communicate with that customer. You still got to find the right channels to get through to people. And understanding where to reach your customer is really important. A lot of us focus on a single channel, but that almost certainly won't deliver the best results, certainly not over time. And focusing on an individual channel can be quite dangerous, particularly in the digital world where things change so frequently. A good example of that is search right now. If you are focused on SEO, if you're focused on Google optimized web pages, that's a real challenge for you, because not only are the AI sites like ChatGPT starting to take some of that traffic, it's still only a tiny amount, but they are starting to take some of that traffic away from Google. But Google is responding by using their own AI results and referencing your content without linking to your website. And that's a real challenge for a lot of websites right now. So focusing on a single channel is both dangerous, but it almost certainly won't deliver the best results. So when I talk about channels, this is the peso model from a book called The Spin Sucks. And it looks at the different types of media, and they all kind of intersect eventually. And I'll explain a little bit more about this. You've got paid, earned, shared, and owned media. That's the simplified version. This is the full version of it from the Spin Sucks book. So let's break these down, and so you can understand where we're coming from on this, to give you an example of this. So paid media. Paid media is what you literally pay for, an ad. So that might be an ad in a newspaper. It might be an ad on TV. It's more likely to be an ad on Facebook or an ad on Google or something like that. That paid media is fairly clear and understandable. Earned media is more around sort of media relations, around PR, and around link building and things like that. Shared media is where partnerships come into play. I'm here presenting myself on behalf of Neve Learning. This is both of us working in partnership, and this is a shared media piece that's going on on here as well. Owned media, this is the stuff that you have a bit more control over. This might be your organic social media. It might be your search engine optimization side of things. And in the middle, where all of this intersects, is where you really start to build your reputation and your trust and those sort of thought leadership pieces, and really sort of start to understand where we go from here. We're coming to the end of the core presentation on this, but I think it's worth thinking about. Let's think about this for example. Who is the what are the channels that you came across this webinar from? Because it's been promoted in multiple different places. So it was promoted primarily on LinkedIn, both by Neve Learning, but also by me as well. So you may have come through one of those channels. It's been promoted through email, and it's been promoted through word of mouth as well. So there's a bunch of different channels that are all sort of coming together to get you to come along to this webinar today. And if we'd have done one of those channels, some of you would have come, but not everybody. So I think it's kind of really worth thinking about trying to understand how you can use your content across multiple channels to find your target audience, if that makes sense. We've got through that in record time. I realize that's kind of a really quick look through ideal customer profiles, value propositions, and a little bit on channels. But I'd love to take any questions. If anybody has a question, please do pop it in the event chat. It would be very good to do that. Otherwise, I would just continue to waffle and talk. I'm assuming everyone has access to the chat. I think you can get that in the corner of the screen there. I've got a yes from Angela. Thank you. On the Neve site, we've put up a couple of resources. I think you'll be able to get access to the sites, the slides on there, but also we've got a couple of worksheets. So there's some information about how to write out your ICP. There's also some information about the value proposition piece and that value proposition canvas as well that you can use. Angela says, in terms of channels for B2B, what would be your key recommendations? It really depends on where your customers are likely to be hanging out. For me, and it depends on the type of business that you're looking at. So if I look at my business, my ICP, my ideal customer profile, for example, is a founder of a business, probably a tech business, of a startup or a scale up. They might be the CEO, they might be a business leader there, but typically they're founders. And they're quite difficult people to find in terms of channels. But the LinkedIn is a really good place on that. So in terms of my owned media, if you like, my own LinkedIn channel. What you can then do is amplify that by buying ads. So you're moving into the paid space on there, although LinkedIn ads are extremely expensive. But then you can also think about, well, let's narrow that ICP down a little bit. I work quite a bit, for example, with founders in the climate tech and sustainability space. So I go to a lot of networking events for those climate type organizations. And, there's more that I could do there, right? I could sponsor some of those events, for example. I could sponsor their email newsletters. I could get ads going in there. And the more you focus down on your ICP, the more you'll understand where there's opportunities to get through to people in there. But some of those old channels, if you can build an email list, email still works. It's a great channel to get through to people on. You probably need some SEO going there in the background, even if you think people are unlikely to search for my type of business, come along and buy the product, right? It's still important to have that SEO capability going, because people will still come. They might have heard about your business and they want to check you out. You're as likely to lose business by not being SEO ready as you are to gain it, really. So I think that's a really key thing to bear in mind. So I think it's worth thinking about your channel structure and thinking about really understanding which are the free elements you can use and which are the paid elements, because you'll probably need a blend of both of those. ChatGPT is a really good example. How do you manage ChatGPT in terms of taking traffic away from search engines and the like? It's really interesting because on the whole, to get noticed by ChatGPT, to get to come up in ChatGPT's results, if you like, you need to do much the same as you do with organic SEO, right? So you've got to have authoritative content. It's got to be seen to be authoritative. One of the great ways of being authoritative is to have people link back to you. Interestingly, it sees Reddit as a really good source of that content. So if you can get mentioned on Reddit, that will not only give you traffic potentially from Reddit and from Google, because it reads Reddit, but that will also help out with things like ChatGPT. But if you think about how people interact with something like ChatGPT, they're asking very deep, very specific questions. And if you answer that very deep and very specific question, you're likely to come up in that as well. Also, super important to understand, ChatGPT is very closely aligned with Microsoft. ChatGPT, when it goes out to search the web, uses Bing. If you ain't on Bing, you ain't getting in ChatGPT. So don't just think about Google, think about Bing on there as well. I don't know whether we've got time for any more. I realise we're at the 10:30 mark. But if you have any questions, later questions, my email's on the screen. Please do drop me a message or come through the guys at Neve. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. But thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Ian. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Dan.